And it is my pleasure to introduce our host and moderator, Shân Millie of Bright Blue Hare, who specializes in supporting practical innovation for the established and for the new and insurance tech businesses. And she's also been a long-term supporter of CogX, which we're very, very grateful. So Shân, I know you're also an insurance obsessive. Perfect panel for you to be hosting. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Charlie. And yes, it is a great pleasure to be talking to someone who's almost as obsessed with insurance as I am. And probably more, actually, because he's built a massive business and really a way of life from it. David, it's a pleasure to meet you and have the opportunity to have a good conversation with you today. I'm really sorry, as we've previously said, that all you're getting is a throbbing avatar rather than my live face. But let's make the best of that. I
was expecting some blue hair for giving the...
Well, it's the animal, you see, not Marge. But it could have been Marge, David. So, yes, I'll try and do better next time. So, David, I think it would be really useful for those of us joining on the global leadership stage, just to get a sense of where your business fits into the wider business world, not just as a very successful insurance business. Would you just share with us all what you think that means?
Yeah, sure, Shân. So to give some sort of context, and I'm always aware, you know, when I'm talking about insurance, which I love and I'm passionate about, and I believe is something that, you know, is very often underrated and undersold, that some people say, well, insurance and what's its relevance. Well, give some concept of our group. You know, we operate in 40 countries. We employ approaching 6,000 people. We are the 5th largest employee-owned business in the UK, and we are the largest non-US insurance broker in the world. We are a private company, as I touched upon already. We're an employer-owned company, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we come across some of the themes. So we're not public quoted, but we do have a way of valuing our company so that our shares that our employees have some liquidity to them. And in that context, the valuation of the company stretches into many billions. So that hopefully gives you some context of the scale of our business, which, like I said, is very much a global business as well, not just a UK-centric business.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting case study of business transformation and running a business, full stop, actually. But it's also, for me, knowing what I do about the insurance sector, and as you know, David, I'm obsessed with the social necessity of insurance as well. When you set out to change the insurance status quo and build a business on principles that were really, I mean, in my experience, I can't think of another insurance business that was talking about it in the same way that you were when you founded your business. So I guess talking a little bit about that origin story, let's dig into that a little bit more. I mean, how different and audacious, bold, daring, or stupid, perhaps, did you think that setting out in the way that you did was back then? Did it feel massively different?
I think, you know, like a lot of things, when you do something at the time, you're not always aware of the consequences, and that's the beauty of action over words. But you know, I started a business just over 25 years ago now. I'd been in insurance a long time. I'd already been in insurance for 15 years when I did that, and I just didn't like what I saw, and I didn't actually want to work at any of the firms that were out there, and I wanted to start something different. So I set a firm up. There were just 3 of us, and actually, well, actually, it's true. There was 4 of us because I had a dog. My first wife had left me. Actually, she left me with the dog, so I had to bring the dog to the office. And you know, that was the receptionist at the time because we were in a very small office, and when you open the door, the dog used to come bounding towards you. You know, but we had some very clear principles that we wanted to build the business around. And first and foremost, I come back to it. It was about building something for the long term. And I think one of the issues we have today is there's so much short-termism in the world, and people build something to sell it, or they say a quote because it's populist to say that quote, or they want an immediate reaction. We knew we wanted to build something for the long term. We knew that to do that, we wanted the employees, the people working in the business, to have the ownership in that. We knew we wanted to be fun, quite frankly. You know, we spend so much time working. We wanted to trust each other, be friends, empower each other, have a different culture. And I think culture is always very underrated. Lots of firms talk about it and they come up with bullshit statements about their corporate culture that they smash up on the walls for their employees to look at. But actually, they don't believe it. They don't mean it. They're just saying because it sounds good. We wanted actually our culture to be our real DNA. What drove the business? And finally, we wanted to have something where really we were delivering expertise and results and actually making a difference. I mean, you know, I think if you want to build a business, and, you know, I'm in insurance because I love it, but ultimately, I'm not really in insurance. I'm actually building a business. And I think that's really the differential. And I'm building the business over the long term.
Yeah.
And we celebrated 25 years last year, and now we're looking forward to the next 25 years.
And we're gonna dig into that a lot more as we go forward as well, David. Thank you. So, okay, there's three of you and your beautiful dog, because it is a beautiful dog. I've seen the picture.
By Marana. Yeah, it was a lovely dog. Yeah, a flight. Yeah.
So I guess setting out in that way, yes, I get it. Keeping that course, though, David, I mean, there must have been moments when you had your doubts, right, about whether or not, A, this was the right thing to do, that was actually going to work. Because however much you wanted to disrupt the insurance status quo, it's called the status quo for a reason, right? That was the context that you were operating in. So would you share, were there moments, can you think back over those 25 years and perhaps initially that those really important first 5 or 7 years when you were scaling, where you felt either, I'm not sure about this for whatever reason, or you felt, oh dear, I was going to swear then, David, but I controlled myself. We messed up. Yeah. So would you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I'd say first and foremost, you know, ultimately, if you're building a business, one of the key things you need is resilience. You know, it's never going to be plain sailing. And there are, you know, secondly, actually, you've got to really embrace making mistakes, really getting it wrong, but just learning from it. And I think, you know, along the way, I'll never forget a time we were trying to do a deal with a broker overseas and get them to join us. And I had a finance director at the time who'd clearly gone slightly off the tracks. And I remember just as we were about to close on the deal, I got a call from my bank saying, David, you know, we're wondering when you're going to repay the £2 million overdraft you built up. And I thought, sugar, I thought I had cash in the bank. You know, we got over that. We managed it. We bought the business and we grew. I remember, you know, in the financial crisis in 2008, you know, we had a first time an outside investor, minority investor coming in, and you know, we saw the world falling over as share prices crashed, and our business was really looking like it might be in trouble. And in fact, again, we picked ourselves up and we built it up. And I think that building resilience in the business is very, very important, particularly if you want to build something that's sustainable over the long term. And I think you can build resilience if you're planning for the long term. If you're looking at short term, it's very hard to do that because you make decisions on the short term.
Yeah, and obviously that's the benefit of being a private company and not in the tyranny of the quarterly analyst results, right? So that's one of the things that you've built into the model that you've chosen is obviously conducive to that. Just before we move on though, David, I mean, I think it's, yes, of course, you can make it almost sound like an intellectual kind of, you can plan for the long term, you have choices to make. When you were talking about a missing £2 million, I actually felt a bit sick, and it was a long time ago when I got my money. So, I mean, I guess it does resilience start with recognizing that you as an individual, one is a human, and that you are going to have moments when you don't know what to do, when you're frightened, whatever. I mean, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so I think, you know, ultimately, it's always the case that wherever there's adversity, there's significant opportunity. And, you know, look at the time we're living in today. You know, none of us saw this pandemic coming along or the consequences on it. And you can do two things about it. You can either fear it, worry about it, be concerned about it, or you can think about what are the opportunities? How are we going to get out of this situation? What are the things we can do? And I think there's almost no problem where you can't have that glass half full rather than glass half empty concept. Now, of course, ultimately, you've got to have a business model that's worked. You've got to have something that clients want. But fundamentally, I think if you get good people and you empower them, and that's very, very important, and you give them power, you give them control, and you support them, then you can get through any situation. And that is absolutely key. And it's certainly going to be very important, you know, both for us as a business, us as an insurance industry generally, and indeed for the greater economy and the greater world in the current situation we're in.
Okay, thank you. So you've talked a lot, obviously, and we know that it's an intrinsic part of the Hyperion view of the world about building for the long term and that equaling sustainability. It's really interesting that you've reset your vision, David, really explicitly around sustainability as something that means a bit more even than building for the long term. So I'd like to know what your definition of sustainability is. And I was actually quite interested when I was doing a bit of my research, as you'd expect, on your website, to see no explicit mention of the UN SDGs there. You're not relating it to any particular structures. So I guess, yeah, it's a two-part question. What's your definition of sustainability in terms of that vision reset that you've set in 2019 for Hyperion Group? And what does unsustainable look like to you in the world of business?
Okay, well, first of all, I did actually sign the UN thing last month. So we are signed up to that, although you're quite right. To us, sustainability is about a lot of different things. It certainly isn't just about planting trees. That can be an important part about it. And in the last year, before this problem came along, we were celebrating our last 25 years and launching the next 25 years. I did, talk about building a sustainable business. And what did that mean for us going forward? And yes, it was some of the old stuff about employing. It was about reinvesting all of our profits back in the business. We don't pay out any dividends at all. It was about ensuring, as a business, we were totally focused on our people. We never talk about being client focused. We focus on our people first, absolutely, because we believe if we do that, they will then focus on the client. But I believe that part of the future was more than that. We had to have a much broader stakeholder view. And I love insurance because actually it's been part of the solution for so many centuries, right back in the early days when people were sending ships across seas to have trade. They worked out that they couldn't afford to lose all their cargo. So if they clubbed together, trade could be facilitated. If you go right those days and right through the Industrial Revolution, insurance has been what I used to say was the oil in the engine, and perhaps we should say the battery in the test.
The wind power, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to me, sustainability is about all of those things. So we created the Sustainability Committee. We asked one of our senior non-exec, John Bernstein, who's a big environmentalist, to lead that. And we're looking at all areas. So we're looking, of course, how we make ourselves, actually not just carbon neutral, but actually carbon positive. How we build a business that actually cares about the world. So that's one part of it, but it's only one part of it. It's also, how do we come up with products that help with sustainability? Things like carbon credits. A lot of organizations out there are quite rightly either being required by governments or voluntarily wanting to buy carbon credits. The trouble is, it's already creating a fraudulent world where there are carbon credits being traded many times. Because again, it's back to the adversity thing, the opportunity. So some people think, great, we can make money out of actually cheating on this. So what we've come up with, and we sold our first product on this now actually to a California energy company, is a policy that ensures that the carbon credits you're buying are actually legitimate ones rather than fraudulent ones.
Excellent.
Well, so to me, it's about, yes, building a sustainable business for long term, yes, having a care on the environment, but then it's also about product development and innovation. And then finally and importantly, it's about how do we interact with all of our people and they interact with the world. So we do massive pushes. We launched something called our Hyperion Foundation, which we made a shareholder of our business. So rather than just putting a bit of money in charities, we made our foundation a shareholder of the business. So as our value grows to the foundation, and we're using that to deliver good things through our people and engaging them in it. So to me, sustainability is a whole lot of things. It's not just about environmental.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'd like to dig into that a little bit further, and hopefully we'll get some questions from 6, David, which is when we'll be open to answering questions from our listeners and viewers. So I'd just like to ask then, okay, I buy it, and I get it, and I buy it, David. And
thank you.
I can see your body language. You can't see mine. I was nodding, obviously, and I'm moving my arms, although no one can see it.
You're so just flashing like an avatar to me.
Yes, coming out of that. Okay, great. Are there decisions that you so far as a business have taken where, when you look at it through the lens of 25 years in sustainability in all its meanings, yeah, you've said, actually, no, we can't do that? And I'm thinking across the whole, because you are a big business doing lots and lots of different things. You have bought, you are integrating, you are bringing brands together later in the year, your 2 broker brands, as I read as well. So you're doing all the complicated organizational corporate stuff that lots of the people listening and viewing will be thinking about. So anything to share there around the decisions where you're saying, actually, no, we're not going to do that. And we're not going to do that because it doesn't match with our principles or the roadmap that you've set out so eloquently there.
If you come back to it, I think it's a good point, this on leadership, because there seems to me the world is polarizing all over the place at the moment. It doesn't matter really what the subject is. We had our ghastly breakfast that polarized people. The COVID's even polarizing people. There's all sorts of subjects. And the trouble with some leaders is all they really want is a soundbite reaction to that. They just want to say something that one portion then go great to. And I think the insurance industry can be guilty of that as well. You know, we're no longer to invest in fossil fuels, or we're no longer to insure this or that. We're not there to judge or be the police for the world. You know, we're not trying to claim to be that. You know, ultimately, you know, I've got a large business in India. If you just shut down all of the fossil fuel power stations in India, all you're actually going to do is have a load of people freezing to death. And I'm not sure that that's my right to do that or what I should be doing. I'm absolutely not what I should be. What I should be trying to understand is, how do we actually come up with solutions in our own world that encourage people to move away from that? How do we move premiums into actually the renewable energies way, rather than to be judgmental? And I think that's quite key. And people are very quick these days to make great statements supporting this or that without, in my view, thinking about the real consequences.
Okay, so you're in favour of engagement rather than the alternatives. But I'm just thinking, you know, if you are going to set a net zero target for Hyperion,
yeah,
I mean, if you're following that through the whole supply chain, that is going to be difficult to do, whilst at the same time continuing to do everything, arguably, question mark, that you're doing at the moment, isn't it?
It is, but like all things, nothing that's you know, as important as is going to be easy. And as we go through this roadmap, we've got to sit and ask ourselves, is that actually a sensible decision in order to get us where we want to be? Or is it just a judgmental decision that's not actually benefiting anything? It's slightly ridiculous, you know, to say I'm not going to deal with that person or that person because it gets me closer to being a B Corp organization, and yet that's really bad for the overall world. I don't get that. And of course, making those judgments and having a clear vision of where you want to be, I think, is the most important thing. And I think in the insurance industry, you know, we've got to be very, very focused on that. You know, ultimately, if you look at what's going on at the moment with the pandemic, you know, we've had a role to play in 2 ways. One, in actually, did we sell the right policies in the first place? Did we offer the right protection to our clients in the first place? Secondly, were we resilient as an industry? Were we there when our clients needed us at this time? Thirdly, are we responded to claims in the right way? So all these things are, in essence, part of building a business that A, people have trust in and respect in, but secondly, is part of the solution going forward.
Well, that's a great way to bring this section of our conversation to an end, David. So as I understand it, we are now open for questions. We're not going anywhere, but yes, we do have the opportunity to take a quick glass of water. So I think we're now open for questions. And you won't be surprised, David, to know that I've got a whole list of other questions anyway.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if I start off then, okay, so I think the idea of being open and flexible and applying different criteria and trying to see the systems impact of what you're doing, which is how I am interpreting what you've just been talking about in terms of the choices and the standards that you set yourselves as a group. I guess, does that make it more difficult then to know if you're getting it right? So as you know, CogX, the theme this year is getting the next 10 years right, which when you set it next to your getting the next 25 years right, actually sounds a bit puny and lacking ambition.
Unambitious, I'd say. Yeah, I agree with you.
But let's take, if we can, let's look forward 10 years from now then, right? You've got the next 10 years right as a Hyperion group. What does that look like?
So I think, but first and foremost, it looks like a business that I'm proud to be part of, and all my colleagues are part of working. We just conducted a global people survey right in the middle of COVID-19 because we wanted to actually reach out to our people at the worst possible moment. And, you know, 95% of them are proud to be working in the group and recommend us up. To me, that's first and foremost success. I think if you're proud of your company, what it's achieving, that's a big tick. Of course, I'd like to see the company being financially successful, because that means something very simple. It means we deliver to clients as well. So not only are our people happy, but our clients are happy because they're using us more, they're using our expertise, and they're using our service. So financial success is there, but first and foremost, it's about, are we proud of what we build? How are you really, really proud of what we built? Or have you just done something because there was a quick bug there? And I think that, I was talking recently to an investor who was looking at us, and they said, "Oh, David, it's so refreshing to hear someone talking about the next 25 years rather than selling you within the next 5 years." And I think that focus is important.
I'm stop you there because I got it wrong. Apparently, we have to be moved over. So Charlie's now going to move us over, I think.
Hi, Shân. Hi, David.
Hi, Charlie.
What a great conversation. And you guys were only just getting started, so I hate to cut you off, but we've got our next session on the leadership stage now, which means the many questions that have been coming in, we're going to move across to the breakout Q&A. You guys can obviously continue your conversation there, take any questions you want from the audience. But it really just remains for me to say thank you, Shân, and thank you, David, for this conversation here on the leadership stage at CogX 2020. And we will be back with you soon. Thank you very much. Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.